Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome. We are admitting everyone at the moment, so just give us some time to let folks in. All right. Okay. Well, just for the interest of time to make sure we are on time. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Karen Vang, and I am the Deputy Director for the Center for District Innovation and Leadership in Early Education, also known as DALI-E. And I want to thank you for joining us for the Blending, Braiding, and Layering Funds webinar, A Creative Approach to California's Universal Preschool Program. This webinar is from 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. All right, next slide, Alyssa. Thank you, we can move on. All right, so the purpose of this webinar is to provide information and an example of blending, braiding, and layering funds for early education within a local education agency context. And this webinar was organized as a response to what we were hearing out in the field about people needing and wanting information quickly because many districts are working on their budgets right now for the next school year. With that, I also want to acknowledge that we were not able to accommodate the amount of people who wanted to join us for this webinar due to the high interest. And so we will be recording the webinar and posting it on the DALI website. And then we will also be sharing, sending it out as well. Next slide. For today's agenda, we will do a welcome and introduction, and then we'll move into the main portion of the webinar, which is a presentation on the truth about implementing the California Universal Preschool Program with our two amazing presenters today. And then we will have roughly 30 minutes for questions and answer, where you can come off mute and ask questions of our presenters. And then we'll have a closing portion of the webinar as well. Next slide. All right. The host organization for this webinar is DALI-E at Cultivate Learning at the University of Washington. DALI stands for the Center for District Innovation and Leadership in Early Education. And DALI-E serves as a convener, facilitator, policy advocate, and connector, as well as a partner to co-create student-centered solutions from the ground up that uphold every child's promise from the start. DALI's goal is for local education agencies such as school districts, county offices of education, and state departments to create and implement a culturally competent early education mixed delivery strategy that strengthens and leverages the values of the communities in which they reside in. Next slide. And then our two presenters today are Kelly Fountain and Shanna Birkholz-Vasquez. Dr. Kelly Fountain is the Director of Early Learning at Lancaster School District. Kelly is a distinguished leader in early childhood education, specializing in system design, program development, and district-level implementation of high-impact learning initiatives. As Director of Early Learning for the Lancaster School District and a published contributor in statewide early education initiatives, Dr. Fountain has led transformative efforts to expand high-quality programs, strengthen educator development, and establish sustainable structures that support children, families, and communities. Her work integrates research, policy, and frontline operational execution, ensuring districts are not just compliant, but positioned for long-term success. Our next presenter is Shanna Birkholz-Vasquez, who serves as the Associate Director of the Early Education Division at the California Department of Education. Throughout her career, from her work in San Juan Unified School District and Oakland Unified School District to her roles in other states and her leadership at CDE, Shanna has remained committed to advancing cultural responsiveness and equity for children and families across California. She has also been a strong advocate for expanding high quality play based learning from preschool through third grade as a foundation for whole child development. In her current role, she contributes to shaping policies and decisions that support a more equitable and developmentally appropriate early learning system for all young children and their families. All right, thank you. Now I'm going to pass it on to Kelly.
Thank you, Karen, so much for that wonderful introduction. I would just like to say thank you in advance to Dali for hosting us. Shanna and I have been traveling around the state trying to get this message out there, and this opportunity that you're providing for us today will get this message to a lot more people in a much more timely format. So thank you so much for hosting us today. And I want to sort of introduce a little bit about how Shanna and I got to working together on this. We end up in the same spaces because we were passionate, as you heard in our introductions, about bringing this play-based learning experience. And I was in a space with Shanna one time, and she said, if anyone's willing to present this with me, which I immediately said, oh, I'm willing to do that. Are you serious? And she said yes. So that's how we started getting this presentation out there today. And today we're going to talk around some of the really key focus areas around blending and braiding, and what a district would, or a county office of ed, or an early ed partner would need to have in place to go over what makes a successful model. So we're going to focus a little bit on focus area A, vision and coherence, a little bit about workforce and retention and recruitment and professional learning, and then the last area, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. But we'll start with vision and coherence, and I'll let Shanna take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. And I'm just really excited, as Kelly mentioned, we're just excited to be here and share this information. And we've been so happy to see so many people as we've been able to do some presentations around California. I wanted to start off and share a little bit about TK and its implementation, which is now fully universal. So this year, TK is available to all 4-year-olds. And so we wanted to give you some things to keep in mind. So in prior years, only some 4-year-olds were eligible for TK, but now if you turn 4 by September 1st, you're eligible to enroll in TK. This year, the adult to student ratio also decreased from prior years. So it used to be 1 adult to every 12 students, and now we require 1 adult for every 10 students to allow for more individualized support for our youngest learners. The average class size for TK is 24 students, but I really need you to keep in mind that that is average per school site, not per classroom. That's a little bit of a distinction there. TK educators must possess a teaching credential that authorizes instruction in a TK classroom, and it must meet one of the following requirements. So they either need to have at least 24 units in early childhood education or child development, or both. It either needs to be as determined and documented by the LEA employing the teacher, professional experience in a classroom setting with preschool age children, meeting the criteria established by the governing board or body of the LEA that is comparable to 24 units of education described in option 1. So that is a local control option. LEAs have the ability to make the decisions on what that looks like. Or 3, a child development teacher permit or an early childhood education specialist credential issued by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. And then we just wanted to also note that curriculum, TK must use a curriculum that is age and developmentally appropriate and aligned to the preschool TK learning foundations. And we want to go in the next slide because we want to share something really exciting, and that is a budget update. One of the things that I know a lot of people have shared about is that it states in EdCode that TK is the first year of a two-year kindergarten program, and that's caused some confusion because then it makes people think that TK should look like kindergarten, and it shouldn't. TK is another preschool option for families, and so we're really excited about some shifts that are tentative in this year's budget. Some proposed changes to the language in Education Code Section 48,000, which includes a definition of developmentally appropriate curriculum for TK. That you'll see on the screen. So as a reminder, all proposed changes remain tentative until the budget is finalized. So the suggested changes would remove the statement that TK uses a modified kindergarten curriculum and replaces it with a curriculum that is age and developmentally appropriate. The definition as proposed in trailer bill language is as follows. Developmentally appropriate curriculum includes instructional practices that promote child development and learning through a strength and play-based approach to joyful, engaged learning that addresses the domains of development and preschool TK learning foundations. It also says a cohesive set of principles, learning goals, intentional teaching strategies, activities, experiences, and materials designed to help children learn and thrive in ways that are appropriate to their age and stage of cognitive, social, emotional, and physical development, as well as their individual needs and cultural experiences. This is huge, and I can tell from the reactions coming up and scrolling through that you feel that this is as huge as we do. We really see this change to help TK curriculum by addressing TK curriculum in statute and provides necessary legislative recognition of what constitutes developmentally appropriate curriculum. So now if we go to the next slide, we really like this graphic that depicts our playful learning tree, which explores what instructional time can and should look like in a UPK classroom that embraces play-based learning strategies. So this graphic highlights learning thrives in an environment that celebrates and affirms cultural and linguistic diversity, actively combats racism and pursues equity, embraces inclusion, and promotes belonging for each and every child. So we have created this tree, and if you'll see at the very bottom, we're very intentional in that you see learning centers as those big green leaves, because we believe that our young learners they thrive in environments where there are child-directed playful learning activities. And so that's why those leaves are so big, because that's where we feel like the bulk of time should be spent. And then with the remaining time spread across educator-guided and educator-directed playful learning activities. And those are available through whole group and small group contexts. And it's just important to note that playful learning, like all learning, is rooted in strengthening home language skills and building social emotional skills for all children. And so we are really excited about that tree. We can go to the next slide. And then we just really wanted to take a minute to talk about how high quality preschool programs ultimately help children as they enter into kindergarten equipped with the tools that help them succeed, and that we believe very strongly in a mixed delivery approach, meaning that families should choose which option works for them and their family. And so we have, one option is definitely transitional kindergarten, but additionally, we have our California State Preschool program serving 3 and 4-year-old children, and now some 2-year-olds. We have Federal Head Start. We have other subsidized programs that operate a preschool learning experience and are operated by community-based organizations, family childcare, private preschool, and expanded learning opportunities. And so while we're really focusing on a model today that blends a transitional kindergarten and a California State Preschool program, we really just wanted to take a minute to share that we believe strongly in a mixed delivery approach. And research confirms children who've attended a high-quality preschool program have improved self-control and the ability to manage emotions. They also have higher achievement in math and reading throughout elementary school, increased likelihood of graduating from high school, and an increased likelihood of earning a college degree. So now that I've kind of shared some of that foundational aspects on CDE's perspective on this, I want to pass it over to Kelly to hear about the amazing work that's happening in Lancaster Unified School District.
Thank you so much, Shanna. So I want to start by talking about this work that I'm going to share is the concept is really a system change. And the reason I put a vacuum on the screen is because none of this happened in a vacuum. It was really hard work to get the entire system to shift and to think about what that might look like. Meant that everyone in our system had to really identify their beliefs around what we wanted for the whole child in our system. And whether you were a teacher, an admin, a district, or county office of ed person in this system, wherever you sit today, we all have a role to share in making sure that play-based environment that Shanna just described that is happening for children. So when I first introduced this is sort of like what it felt like for me. It was like pushing a colleague in the early learning and care system said this sounded like the journey I told him about sounded like pushing Jello up a hill, and it very much was. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how we started that process, but throughout the process, it felt like I'm pushing so hard on a system, and I did that because 4-year-olds deserve a high quality program and experience. And in the state preschool program that I was directing, that is exactly what they got. So as the kids shifted to the district, I unapologetically, relentlessly pushed to make sure they had that same experience. And that could feel a little cold at times, very isolating. So I want to go over a little bit about the demographics of our district. We are a PK through 8th grade district. We have a pretty high unduplicated count. We're over 90%. High chronic absenteeism and socioeconomically disadvantaged. We have a very high foster youth, highest in the county, and I think 3rd highest in the state. And then our students with disabilities pretty high, is around 43%. We have a lot of English language learners or multilingual learners, and our proficiency in English language arts and math are pretty low comparatively. In our state preschool contract, we have 862 half-day spots and then 120 full-day spots. When I started this work with the district, we were all sort of called to write this implementation grant. And so in writing the grant, I wanted to make sure I pulled in input from stakeholders. So we started a steering committee that included everyone in the district that I felt would have a stake in this plan and what it would look like as it rolled out, which included, teachers from both the classified and credentialed union. There were union representation from both CSCA and from our TAL or our CTA. We also had experts that came in from what it means to be in the HR role, what it means to be in the fiscal role, what it means to be in the facilities management role, and the curriculum and instruction role, because everybody was going to have a part in the work that was going to be done to make sure this rolled out correctly. When we looked at what we were going to design, we wanted to make sure we have access to a high quality program for 2 years old through 5 years old in our district. And we wanted to work towards a fully included program for our students that had disabilities. And we were going to work in this world where we're going to blend and braid funding together to make sure that we could provide this opportunity for all children, because as you know, the needs of TK are expensive. And so I'm going to walk you through a little bit how we leveraged funding to make sure we could provide that. We did talk in our steering committee about curriculum. We talked about that play-based approach. We talked about DRDP. We talked about ECHRS, and we talked about the classroom assessment scoring system. We did have this conversation where LCAP is concerned that in order to make this sustainable for our system and our district, we wanted to make sure that TK was highlighted in our LCAP priorities. And we do have 2 priorities, academics and equitable learning practices. These were also called out in our strategic plan as well. But the idea here was that we were going to provide a play-based foundational learning experience for all 3 to 5-year-olds in our system. And the reason it was originally 3 to 5 is because as state preschool regulations changed, we did then bring in 2-year-olds into our district. Our approach for UTK implementation was different and unique than most districts out there in the state. We decided after learning a little bit about blending and layering and braiding funding that we were going to enroll all children in TK through the state preschool system. So in the first year, this was like a lot of people were very like confused by what do you mean enroll them through state preschool? We talked about what the enrollment process looked like and some of those regulations and sometimes barriers that they present for children and their families. And then we talked about enrolling them through the state preschool system means that we needed to have a specific SIS system for the TK students because we report data to the state in a different place than the school district reports data. And then we wanted to make sure that we had a parent communication system that was set up with the early learning lens. So we adopted a vendor called Learning Genie, which houses our DRDP assessment and our parent communication. This is a different tool than the district uses for communication to parents. So it was important that everyone in the system understood why we needed a different tool and how that was going to look different when families enrolled. We also work really hard on recruiting children through a district lens. So we put out recruitment materials every year at enrollment. The district enrollment welcome and wellness system uses this information as well so that families know that when they come into the system, if your child falls in this age range, this age range, or this age range, this is where you're going to enroll. We did not give families an opportunity to opt out of the state preschool system in the last 2 years. Prior to that, they just enrolled and we try to figure out what to do with the kiddo. So we adapted the system or changed the system as we went to make sure we were meeting needs of families. So our current enrollment, and this is the most up to date, we have 623 kids sitting in our state in our UTK classrooms that are also enrolled in state preschool. You can see on here there is one spot left, one spot in our dual language immersion program, but the rest of our UTK is full. This means 623 part-day preschool spots are also full. So this is where the blending and braiding starts to come together. If I hadn't have done this, we would have a state preschool program that didn't have full enrollment, which means we wouldn't be earning on that contract. And I'll tell you a little bit about why that's important. So in 2022, I was invited to a webinar and Amanda Dickey, brilliant Amanda Dickey, was like laying out this idea of blending, braiding, and layering. And I know for many of you who have heard me talk about this before, I do call this the other BBL. So just in case to help you remember. But this is the idea that you can use money in multiple ways to support children in a classroom. So if you're blending, you're in one classroom, students are during one period of time, but you're using multiple funding sources. Braiding is kids are in multiple classrooms for more than one period. And then layering is you're adding additional services in to support students with additional funding sources. It's important that if you're going to go towards this model that you understand the way in which you're using money, which means you need to have a partnership with someone in the early learning and care world in your system, someone in the curriculum assessment in your system, someone in the fiscal department, because this work can't be done in a vacuum. One person cannot just say, oh yeah, we're going to blend this out and see what it looks like. So I like to go over a little bit about, this is LA County's numbers, and we might have people out there from the state that are not in LA County, but in LA County, the state reimburses or provides funding for TK students in the following way. They get a base grant of about $10,000. There's a grade span adjustment of about $1,000, and then there's a TK apportionment that's 5,500. So the total funding for each TK student is $16,868. Every TK student that enrolls in just your district system is bringing this in. This is important to note because in many systems, we see children that are still in classrooms with desks and chairs without all of the materials that they need to have a play-based learning environment. So in the system, there are people who don't understand the apportionment that's coming in for children who are either in service of children at the practitioner level or in maybe even at the district level. Everyone needs to come together to understand there is a lot of money coming in for TK, so we need to make sure we're using that money appropriately. In our state, most districts are providing 20 children an opportunity for TK in a ratio with staffing of 1 to 10. So I did a little bit of math here. If you are bringing in 16,860 per kid, you're bringing in about $337 per classroom if you have 20 children in there. And then your out costs, these are just estimated out costs for a UTK teacher and an additional staff member. It's about 206,000. And for us in our system, we have a credential teacher and then we have a qualified state preschool teacher in there. So our costs might be a little higher because the qualified state preschool teacher is being paid a little bit more than if you were just to put an instructional aid in there. And then I added in some materials and overhead because kids in TK in a learning environment that's play-based, they like glitter and they like glue and they like tape just to cut the tape and put it all over the place. They use a lot of materials quickly, which is why it's around $39,000 a year to support children with the materials that they need. So if your district has 20 kids in the class and 1-to-10 ratio, they bring in about $337,000 per classroom if you're LA County. The apportionment might look a little different for different counties. And your cost out is $206,000 for those two adults. You're still netting $130,000. So that's over and above the materials that you paid for, over and above the benefits for the staff. There's still money in the TK system to support children. That money could be used for reducing the ratio further. It could be used for doing inclusive practices, bringing in behavior support for children who have challenging behavior, for PD costs. Those things should be considered with that additional 130,000. So I'm going to shift a little bit about state preschool because we run a large state preschool contract, and state preschool brings in $62 per day for a full day student. And if you have a part day student, it's $39.69 per part day. So 2 part day kids brings in $79 per day, 1 full day, $62. And then there's an adjustment, a part day adjustment factor for part day kiddos. That's about 63 cents. So I'm telling you all of this because when you see what we do, you're going to understand. Okay. So at the top of this little graphic here, you'll see that we have in our program 862 part day spots. And if we put those kiddos in the classroom AM and PM, you'll see here where it says AM 731, that would be kids that are in TK, and 131 in the PM. Those are in part day standalone classes. We bring in about $6 million. For our full day children, which we have 120 spots, if we were full for a 210 days, we can bring in $1.5 million, which brings our contract to 7.7 million, which does not include our cost of care. It does not include any adjustment factors. In the green box underneath, what you'll see is where state preschool is paying adjustment factors for students with differing needs. So if a child has an exceptional need, there's an additional adjustment factor of 2.4. If they have a severe disability, there's also an adjustment factor. If they're 3, you get an adjustment factor. If they're 4, a dual language learner or a student at risk, you're getting adjustment factors. So this is important to think about because in our system, we fully include students in our TK and our PK program. So that means we're able to collect additional monies to support those children in that space. This is important because if you have a state preschool contract on your district boundaries, or if they're across the street and you partner with them, you can be collecting additional money to support the children that are in that space and all of the needs that they may have. So if the group size is 24, you're going to probably bring in around $80,000 additional dollars. So it's around $404,000 if you have 24 kids in the room. Remember, I said you had $130,000 extra dollars that you could use to reduce the ratio. Even if you kept them at 20 kids. If you bring it to 24 kids, you're bringing in even more money. So you have $404,000 in our system per classroom because we have 24, plus we're bringing in that state preschool money. So this is just a sample classroom. If there was 19 4-year-olds that were in that classroom, typically developing, 4 kids with exceptional needs, and 1 with severe disabilities, we're bringing in an additional $221,000 into that class on top of the 404. So the revenue for that class per year is over $500,000. This is the reason we're bringing this information to you is as March 15th approaches and many of you have not filled your state preschool spots, you're considering laying off staff. This is a way to rethink how you're doing the enrollment, how you're supporting the state preschool program, and the state preschool program is then also supporting you. If you don't have state preschool on your campus, but you have someone across the street, they have spots that aren't full. So think about how you would partner with them, and we'll talk about there's opportunities to do that in very different ways. So in our program, our LEA is funding 2 adults in that space. So we have a credentialed teacher, and then we have a second teacher. The co-teacher is called an early learning specialist. That person has a child development lead teacher permit. In many cases, they have a bachelor's degree. The difference between the two of them is the credentialing courses. And then out of state preschool, we fund a child development paraeducator. And the 4th position is co-funded with state preschool and ELO. So we have a 7-hour adult child development pair that comes in at 9 o'clock, relieves the staff in the classroom to have their breaks and their lunches, stays with the children as they transition from after school to aftercare, and is the continuity of care in the space. And we are able to reduce the ratio 1:8 because we blended funding and we have additional money to do that. We also in our system are providing additional support in this way. So I'm going to show you the requirements on staffing in this space look like this. So the teacher and the credentialed teacher has their credential plus the 24 units. We met those 24 units August of 23 because we started working on that in August of 22. That was before the governor pushed back the date to have everybody have the 24 units. None of the people in our system, we use the district discretion. They all have either the lead teacher permit or 24 units of early childhood development. The second person has a BA or an AA plus the child development permit. And we'll talk about how we get them up to the BA in a second. And then the second 2 adults in the room have 6 units at a minimum of ECE. We also use the funding in the space to bring in a BCBA. So we use some special ed early intervention preschool dollars for that. We have some of those monies are used as well to bring a special ed para in, an inclusion teacher. We also have inclusion special ed paras and speech. We pay for this early administrator, the early learning administrator, which was myself out of CSPP. We have a coach that comes in. We contract between CSPP and Quality Start, which is another funding source that State Preschool has. We bring in Teaching Pyramid, which connects the dots for the district on what a good MTSS looks like with workforce at the bottom to the PBIS structure that's already at the district. And then we use the apportionment dollars to provide some school psychologist relief to do some mental health consultation. All of the children in our state preschool and our TK classes are in a 1:8 ratio. They eat breakfast and lunch in the classroom, and all TK students rest for 50 minutes a day. I created for you a little schedule because people often ask, well, how did you get the ADA minutes and the state preschool minutes? So if you follow along the top, the green band there is talking about CSPP time. Our kids actually come into care around 7:20, 7:30 in the morning. We don't start state preschool time until 8. But if we wanted to start state preschool time at 7:30, we could use state preschool funds starting at 7:30 and just run those classes until 10:30 to make sure that we're meeting the 3 hours of per day, which is the Title V compliance. And then UTK starts at 11, goes to 2:33, and that's in the afternoon. You'll see that happens Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. They're getting 3 hours and 43 minutes times 140 days. It's about 48,000 minutes, well over the district or the state's requirement of 36,000 minutes. And then on minimum days, we are able to run the state preschool time, and then they get an additional hour and 15 minutes on a minimum day with the credentialed staff, which is about 4,600 minutes, 40 minimum days in a year. So we're well over the required 36,000 minutes. So why did we do this? I'm going to tell you, this is a picture of me and the preschool staff. When the state started shifting 4-year-olds to the district, I started seeing the loss of these wonderful women's jobs. And so I had to think outside the box to figure out how can I save their jobs. They work really hard and they're experts in the work that they do. So I engaged in this conversation with the district about blending because I wanted to make sure for 2 things. One, these women kept their jobs and were able to provide that quality care for children. And 2, 4-year-olds shifting over to the district would also be able to have the opportunity to have quality care. So we started shifting some of these ladies as they were ready and they wanted to get their BA degree or become a credential teacher. We started shifting them over. The reason we did that is because you could see on this graph, these are our three different pots of kids, or buckets we have kids in. The bottom line is our full day spots. The full day spots have sort of been where they are because full day is something that has been impacted by TK because families don't have to provide need if they want to go to TK full day. They have to provide need if they want to go to CSPP full day. So many of the children have shifted over to the 4-year-old space. Our 3-year-olds that are still with us, they are in the full day. We have 120 spots and we have about 72 filled all year round. The purple line is our PK, so our non-UTK kids. And you can see that's drastically dropping as the years go on because the kids are shifted over to the 4-year-old space. And now on the blue, the dark blue line, you can see how drastically that shot up. These are all of the TK kids that are also state preschool. So we're over 600. We have no more spots. We do have a space ready if kids come, but some families don't want to move their children to a different location, so they're opting to wait it out till kindergarten, or we offer them the opportunity to go to state preschool, and we're working on communication that if you want to stay in your area of town, there is a state preschool or a Head Start or private childcare 2 blocks away if you're interested in enrolling there so that your child has that opportunity. And like I said, everyone's in a 1-to-8 ratio in any program we offer. We had to shift for other reasons too, because our full day contract, like I said, was declining. When the state said you could take 2-year-olds, I said to the superintendent, could we entertain the idea of 2-year-olds? And in the beginning, he was like, what? Why do you want to take 2-year-olds? But you can see that he was the first one there the day we opened. We call that the tot spot. And we have 12 full day children in that space and 4 part day, so that we have options for families if they don't want their kid in their full day. We also had to open another center to accommodate the additional TK kiddos. In November, we opened that center, and that allowed us to fill one other classroom with 24 children, which families were excited about that opportunity, and we made the AV Press. They were excited about that. And then in May, we will open a center that we were able to build based on facilities money that came in the focus area about facilities, and that will have 7 classrooms, and that'll be a mix of TK, PK, and K. This is the best schematic I had for it. It looks better than that, but that's it. Okay, so we're going to shift now over to curriculum, instruction, and assessment, and I'll send it back to Shanna.
Thanks, Kelly. I hope you all can see as you were listening why I thought it was so important to partner with Kelly on some of these presentations because of all of the great work and the true mixed delivery system that is being created in Lancaster Unified School District. So we wanted to take some time just to highlight some other resources and some other philosophical CDE's philosophical approach to early learning and care, and that is play is a critical component for aligning developmentally appropriate practice and coherence across the early grades. So we have created, and as you know, like play is, a natural way for children to explore and learn and discover things. And so we created this playful learning graphic to really show the different types of play. This was made in an effort to really support educators in communicating to their administrators a lot of times around, we saw someone in the chat who had said that, outside at recess, the administrator was telling the children to be quiet. They didn't understand the learning and play that was happening. And so this graphic can really be used in a lot of ways, but it really showcases the different types of play that happen and can happen throughout a day. So it goes from child-directed to more educator-directed. So we have free play all the way to playful learning and learning games. But just want to highlight too, as a reminder, that our youngest learners thrive when they spend more time engaged in play-based learning activities that are child-centered. So definitely we see this graphic being used not only just in TK, but through our whole P3 alignment, but really keeping in mind that we want to really focus in on those play-based child-directed activities in our early TK grades, and our CSPP. If we go to and then we wanted to just highlight I'm sorry. I was just going to say we put a picture of the developmentally appropriate practices from NAEYC as a resource, and a good guide. There's lots of ideas and strategies in that publication, so it's something definitely worth checking out. We wanted to, on our next slide, talk a little bit about our P3 alignment work that we've done, because we really believe that, with a universal transitional kindergarten, we see this as an opportunity to bridge that gap between our early learning and care system and our K-12 system, creating, a really strong P3 alignment. And so we wanted to just make sure that we highlighted that. We see that as working both horizontally and vertically to really create coherence across grades and systems. Some of that work that you'll see coming out from CDE around that are our P3 learning progressions, which we think are really helpful to schools and districts and counties as they really look at that P3 continuum. We also wanted to highlight on the last slide, our PTKLFs. Those came out in 2024, and they were re-released. We re-released and updated them from the 2008 version, and those describe the knowledge and skills that most children ages 3 to 5.5 develop in a high-quality early learning program. And as you can see up there on the screen, there are 9 different areas, learning domains that children learn in, taking note that our literacy domain is split into 2, both a language and literacy, the foundational language development and the English language development. And so you can learn more about the PTKLFs. We also, on our next slide, have some sample TK schedules. We found that when we were talking, sometimes it's hard to visualize, so this can help programs in terms of looking at, how they might want to organize their TK day. We have that both as a full day and a half day option. And we would just want to note that while these are labeled TK, a lot of these resources, they can be used across the whole UPK system. They're meant to be helpful for all of the whole entire UPK system. We also wanted to share on the next slide sample parent communication. So we created several sample a TK parent-teacher conference form, a TK progress report, and a sample TK report card. You can access any of these resources if you go to California Educators Together. You follow our UPK P3 group. You need to create an account now. It used to be free. It's still free. It used to not need an account. Now you need to log in with your email address. There's a QR code that you see on the slide that will take you directly to the sample TK report card. The other documents are in focus area D on the California Educators Together. We will be sending out a resource document that includes direct links to a lot of these documents as well. So we hope that that's really helpful. And then if we go to our next slide, we just wanted to share that although there's not a state mandated curriculum for TK, CDE developed a UPK curriculum checklist that's meant for programs surveying a majority of 4-year-old children. So it's a checklist. The checklist is not a list of curricula, but a framework of elements to consider when choosing a curricula for UPK. I just want to note that it's meant as guidance only and is not a requirement for use, as is all the documents that I talked about besides the PTKLF. You need to use those. It's available now on California Educators Together in that P3 group. We also just really want to highlight another really important resource, which is the powerful role of play in early education. So that publication discusses the critical role of play for children, particularly in early childhood. It talks about why play matters for young children of all cultural, linguistic, and ability groups. And so we think that that's a really great resource to take another look at if you haven't been able to recently. So both the curriculum checklist and the powerful role of play will be in the resource document after the webinar. And so now I'm going to pass it over to Kelly with some more practical examples of how some of this looks in Lancaster.
Thank you, Shanna. So in Lancaster, we are using a curriculum that is basically, it is the preschool transitional kindergarten learning foundations. We do not have a adopted curriculum from a publisher. We provide PD to teachers on understanding those learning foundations, and then we provide them the opportunity and the materials to have autonomy in how they implement those learning foundations in the classroom. We use the DRDP. We are still using 2015 and we're switching over to 2025 this year, but all of our TK teachers, all of our PK teachers, they all use DRDP twice a year. State preschool requires a parent conference twice a year. After the DRDP, the school district only requires one. So we worked with the state preschool teacher of record in the TK space to provide that second conference to families. And, you know, in the very beginning, teachers, the credential teachers were that it wasn't contracted for them to, or contractual for them to do that. But in many of those classrooms, both teachers are sitting there doing those conferences with students. For some of that, we've worked with some of those teachers as well to provide time for them to plan together and implement those conferences. One of the things that we did to reduce job demands for that second parent conference is that tool, that Learning Genie tool, which houses their DRDP and then helps them create lesson plans in their DRDP parent conference in a way that is in parent-friendly language. The other thing that we implemented in all of our classrooms, because it's a requirement of state preschool Title V to use the classroom assessment scoring system on a percentage of classes that are going to increase over the next few years, we just said everybody's going to get it. So we do the class assessment on all 40 of our classrooms, the TK and the PK, and we do provide lots of PD around what does those emotional supports and those instructional supports look like for teachers as they're working with children in this space. In 2015, this is what TK looked like. And around the state today, it might look like this even for some of you. In 2022, we told the teachers, we're going to remove everything from the classroom. So take home your personal effects. When you come back in the summer, at the end of the summer, your classroom is going to look different. So we took everything out and we set up play-based learning environments. We started with 15 classrooms. As enrollment was happening in that summer, we had more and more 4-year-olds coming. So by the end of summer, we had opened 19 TK classrooms. And today we have 26. We're opening a 27th in the fall to increase our dual language immersion opportunities for children in our district. This is an example of the parent report that comes out of DRDP. So it gives the teacher information around where the child is functioning in the different bands of development. And these are correlated directly to the PTKLF, and it provides opportunities for the teacher to give the families a strength-based report about their child, and then opportunities also for the teacher to add in there, here's some things you can do when you're out and about with your kiddo in the area of approaches to learning or in the area of social emotional development. It goes through all of the learning domains, the 9 learning domains as well, and it also helps the families understand we're not trying to push academics on children in TK. What we're trying to do is get them to master those learning domains, those foundational skills, so they are ready when they go to kindergarten, when academics become the nexus, I guess, of learning. So we're trying to provide those play-based learning opportunities for children so that teachers can observe them making gains in this space in anecdotal notes that are being, happening while children are playing, so that teachers can make good decisions about how to adjust their lesson plans and activities for kids each day. We are 100% child-driven pedagogy. We don't have recess outside. We call that outdoor learning space. And teachers in our credentialed union are outside with children during that time. Um, Learning is happening throughout the day, and we partner with children to guide that learning. We partner with families as families come into the classroom every day and sign their kids in and out. We partner with families to check in on how their little one was, the last night, how their morning was, so that teachers have a good read on their social emotional development as they enter into care. And then we partner with families at the end of the day to report out great learning opportunities that were had during the day. And everything in the space is child driven. Our teachers have really risen to the challenge of shifting from that sage on the stage to guide on the side, and they really come alongside children now and ask them open-ended questions and connect concepts for kids, use vocabulary in a way that is really increasing quality for the experience for children. So we also had to create or adapt the district's PD schedule. So this is a sample of our district's PD schedule. You could see on here that these are our Pink Tuesdays. So these are when credentialed staff has a minimum day. So all of our TK kids are in a minimum day as well. So we pull the staff in once a month and we provide them training on UTK information or UTK PTKLFs or DRDP. This year we focused really heavy on teaching pyramid. And so as they come in each month, we get training on teaching pyramid. And then when they're in their PLC time, we provide for them some sort of area for them to capture. What did you talk about in your teaching pyramid learning, and what are your goals for your next steps? We also had to calibrate beliefs in the TK space around mistaken behavior and help teachers to understand that when school starts in August, you have some 3-year-olds. They've been on this earth 36 months. They don't have all the rules of navigating a classroom or all of the rules of being an adult and having adult expectations. So we work with them on the idea of mistaken behavior, and then it's our job to help children make appropriate choices. But first we have to stop and calibrate on the fact that they've made a mistake and they don't know. So we have to support them. We do that by bringing in lots of tools for social emotional learning. We work with conscious discipline, which talks about brain states. So if a child is dysregulated, they're more than likely in a state of survival, asking if they're safe. So we work with teachers. You need to co-regulate with them, help them feel safe. Then you can teach them the expectations in the classroom. We use Second Step in our entire district, and a Second Step started in our early learning program decades ago. And we work on social emotional learning through social stories and helping kids learn empathy by looking at each other's faces, something that kids coming out of the pandemic and on tablets have a lack of neural connections for that. And then we brought in, like I said earlier, teaching pyramid to really connect the dots for our TK teachers to the district's PBIS. Next year, we're going to work on what do expectations look like in the classroom in a visual format, so then children can easily translate that now over to words as they start learning to read over in kindergarten. The beautiful thing about teaching pyramid is PBIS was adapted from a teaching pyramid. Teaching pyramid has that extra layer on there called an effective workspace. So if we work from the foundation of building up the workforce, then we can then layer on the supports that children need to be successful in our early learning spaces. One of the things I was super passionate about in this work, as I was doing my doctorate, I was hearing from teachers all over the state around their administrator makes their job harder. So when I asked them what are the biggest job demands in your space, they said challenging behavior of children, and then administrators that give them ineffective feedback. So because of that, I was very passionate about designing specific training for administrators to build their capacity. Because I think I've said it often, nobody in the LEA space asked for 4-year-olds. And so when we shifted the pedagogy for the teachers, we also need to focus and think about how the admin that's overseeing those teachers needs to understand what the learning looks like and what mistaken behavior is so that they can make good decisions to support their teachers. So we started year one with an academy that was once a month. They came in and they learned sort of like nuts and bolts of what UTK is, from everything from social emotional learning to developmentally appropriate practice. Second year, we did a book study on Julie Nicholson's book, Principals as Early Learning Leaders. We took one chapter a month and we talked about that book. This year, our focus is really targeted on the domains of the classroom assessment scoring system. And so they understand, what does positive climate look like when a teacher and a child are engaged in play in a classroom? So it really helps the administrator calibrate around what positive communication looks like from teacher to child, child to teacher, child to child. So they can really be in a space thinking, is positive communication and positive support happening in this space? Or as an administrator, do I need to step in and say, hey, we need to think about how we're addressing children's mistaken behavior and giving them opportunities to grow. We adjusted the lesson plan expectations, which is really set up around our lesson, our daily schedule, which Shanna shared a sample of the TK schedule. So our staff is building their lesson plan to look like that schedule, so that if an administrator comes in, they can easily find out, oh, these kids are in carpet. During carpet, they learned this, or group time. Some people call that group time. We did really have to build the administrator's capacity on how many adults are in that space and who those adults are. And then work with them too on, if you're going to do a walkthrough in this space, we designed a DigiCoach tool for administrators that is based around the classroom assessment scoring system domains: emotional, classroom, and instructional support. So they went in every month that we learned about emotional support first, and then they would go in the classroom and look for positive climate. Then we came back and learned about educator sensitivity, and then they would go in there and look for educator sensitivity. They did that every month, and then we met back together and looked at the data and had some ahas about, what did you see in the space? What is a great glow that you have, and what are some areas where you need to grow? We're going to shift now principals to working on the consultancy protocol, looking at a problem practice they have in their UTK implementation, either for children, for teachers, or even if they want to identify one for themselves. And we'll do some deeper work with them as we move forward in the plan for next year. In the area of workforce, remember Shanna had presented to you that the 24 units were required for TK. So there's no more waivers for districts, and some districts didn't figure that out until this fall when they were trying to put their TK teachers in, and then the state pushed back and said, no, there's no more waivers anymore. So in our original plan, we didn't allow for district discretion. We either wanted them to have the 24 units or we wanted them to have the lead teacher permit. We did partner with two IHEs, or Institutes of Higher Education, to support coursework, and we wrote the California Classified Employee Grant. We have supported 27 teachers to move through the pipeline and get their credentials or work towards their credential. And we're working with the HR department to understand the importance of that PK3 credential, and getting our teachers, if you already have the 24 units and a multiple subject, to certify and get that credential from the state, because as those interns come through the system, they're going to need teachers with the matching credential to mentor them. So we're working on that. We did this partnership with Antelope Valley College. I happen to teach at the college. So when we were thinking about, we want to make sure all of our teachers had the 24 units, I went over to the dean and said, hey, can we create fast track courses? And so our department worked diligently on creating fast track courses for all the 24 units that teachers would need. We offered that to the whole valley. In their 90% of these courses are online, so anyone in the state could take them. And then we allowed those, we had those teachers, 24 units were in place, ready to go for August of 23, which was awesome. That was before the deadline got set back. We do provide all 90% of the AVC practicum opportunities to students at Antelope Valley College in our classrooms. And then we are working next steps on dual enrollment at the high school. So some students that are in a child development pathway, a career pathway, when the high school district surveyed their students, they asked for a child development career pathway. So we're partnering with them to create dual enrollment classes for next year. And then this is more about the classified school employee teacher grant. Our district blended funding here as well. So out of that classified employee grant, $4,800 per year was provided to our employees to get their credentials or work towards their credentials. And then the district matched that with educator effectiveness. So each student employee, if you will, was provided $9,600. 4 of them have finished their master's, 2 have already finished their bachelor's, 2 this is actually higher now, but 2 of them at the time I did this have their teaching credential. And then we have another estimated 4 graduating in May. If we look at our TK staffing, 15 of the 26 TK teachers that we have today have early ed roots. So they have moved up from some type of early childhood education teaching experience into these TK classrooms. And this is just a picture of me with the TK staff. They're excited. Everybody's excited about the year. We broke some barriers in a couple of other ways. When we said we were going to make sure all TK kiddos had to apply through state preschool, we knew we were going to have a barrier around physicals and vaccines because we live in the desert. I don't know if you know where the Antelope Valley is, but it's not just a childcare desert. It's an actual desert. And it also is a medical provider desert. It's about 400 patients to 1 pediatrician up here, which means that sometimes students wait 90 days for a physical or immunizations. So we broke a barrier and said, let's just hire a nurse practitioner. We hired a nurse practitioner, did an MOU with a medical director, both to oversee that nurse practitioner and a medical director, a children's eye doctor to provide eye exams. So far, we've given physicals to 198 families. Or some sort of services, 24 of those were physical, 22 vision referrals, and we've done 1,300 immunizations. These are kids that would have been sitting at home in TK, PK if they couldn't get in, or even kindergarten because they couldn't get a vaccine. The additional support we provide the district on this is that we provide 100% of students that are in need of a Tdap vaccine. So our clinics will start in April, and we will go to each middle school where 6th grade is sitting and provide the Tdap right there in their school. So families are not burdened with having to find a medical provider and make an appointment or go to a pharmacy. For people in our community where transportation is a challenge, this reduces that burden for those families. We were 100% in kindergarten and PK and TK, 100% in compliance with the vaccines this fall when we open. So we're pretty proud of that. And then full inclusion is another barrier, which I think our district in general is pretty proud of. We about 2 years ago, we decided we were going to do full inclusion because we were in SIGDIS, and the state inclusion target at that time was you should have more than 45% of children included in general education, and our district has 54.47% included in general education. We have around 4 children in each classroom supported by that blending and braiding of funding to support the needs in that classroom and help teachers build capacity on using strategies that work for all kids. Our state target right now is to have less than 27% of extensive support needs children in segregated classrooms. And we are working to increase more spots or more opportunities for our extensive support needs children. Currently, we have 35.77% included in our program. And we're working to design space next year to create more mobility for children that have additional supports needed to support their inclusion. Our next steps are pretty exciting. We're partnering with San Francisco Unified School District with Shoestrings to provide a Tier 3 model for children that need additional support. And we are excited about this opportunity. This is a Tier 3 model that provides intensive support for children in a cohort style. San Francisco and Crystal Hawkins up at Shoestrings has been doing this now for about 280 kids, I think 28 cohorts. Their first cohort is going into high school, if I'm saying that correctly. Their percentages of children that go through these cohorts and then end up suspended is less than 3%. So they are working with kiddos that are preschool and TK and K. And then the number of children that end up assessed for special ed and qualify is around that 3% too, if my statistics are correct. It's a pretty impressive model, and we're excited to be able to partner with them to bring that to our district to meet the needs of the children in our district. And we are hopeful that that will prevent more children from being identified for special education because we're providing the early intervention services they need before there's a gap in their needs. Okay, this one I think we both want. You want to say something first, Shanna? Or you?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I was just going to put in the chat though, CDE will be having a webinar in April featuring Shoestrings, and Crystal will be presenting. And so if you want to hear more about the program and hear the amazing work that Crystal is doing, please, we'll share information about that as well. But we hope you can join us for that. We just wanted to share a little bit. So in September of 2023, there was a management bulletin 2308 that was guidance on suspension and expulsion in the California State Preschool Program. It limits suspension and expulsion for behavior in CSPP and applies to all California State Preschool contractors and subcontractors. So the policy states that except in specific circumstances listed in the directives for implementation section of the management bulletin, a program may not suspend a child due to a child's behavior. It cannot encourage or persuade a child's parents or legal guardians to prematurely pick up a child due to the child's behavior before the program date ends. A program may not expel or unenroll a child because of a child's behavior, and they cannot persuade or encourage a child's parents or legal guardians to voluntarily unenroll from the program due to the child's behavior. So although that is specific to California State Preschool Program, the resources found at the bottom of the page are geared toward children of preschool age, which includes 4-year-olds in transitional kindergarten. And the resources support educators in managing behaviors that many educators may find challenging. I'm going to pass it over to Kelly now.
Thank you. The reason we wanted to make sure this was in here is that our children are blended in state preschool. So we have to follow this Title V, but 4-year-olds are being sent home all over the state for disruptive behavior. And we want to make sure, like, when you're thinking about how you design your program, you need to think about what does it look like when a child does have mistaken behavior, and what is the response to that? Is it in the classroom? Are you moving the child out of the classroom? Is the child sitting in the administrator's office? Is the teacher just calling home and saying, come pick up little Jimmy because he's having a tough day? These things are happening. And if you think about the message that sends to our families and to our 4-year-olds that school isn't always a safe place or a good place or fun or warm and loving place, that will impact them when they come back to kindergarten and they're there all year or first grade. So I always work with the administrators to think about these aren't just your TK kids, they're your future kinders and your future first grade kids. So what messages do you want to send as a school community on how you support children who are having some mistaken behaviors, and what do you want children to learn from that? Do they have an opportunity to do it right? And if they're being sent home, they definitely don't have that. So outside of Title V for state preschool, there are rules around expulsion and suspension for this age range, and you have to provide other means of correction. So in your school system, you need to think about clearly what does that look like for a 4-year-old or even a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, and what is your belief system on what children should be able to do as far as restorative justice practices? Do they have an opportunity to go back to the class or to stay in the class and do it correctly? Is that anything else you wanted to add there, Shanna? No. Okay. All right. The last thing is for just to think about, the state asked the UPK implementation to be this bridge between that early learning and care and the TK-12 system, really thinking about growth and development of children and how children are learning through play, and what does it mean to be successful as they transition to kindergarten. So the bridge really is TK and all of the early learning and care world that is connecting those two spaces. So I just want to say, as a reminder, no matter where you sit in your system, you do have an opportunity to rethink how the child's experience, what does that child's experience look like? And so find a space that you want to push on and push there relentlessly because the children need your help. And those 4-year-olds today are tomorrow's 5-year-olds. Those kids are going to be the ones that are in society with us as we're driving around and doing our business and our life. So what do we want our future society to look like? And now is the time to invest in that, to support those children as they move on throughout life. This
All
is the
right. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
no,
Sorry.
no, these are the resources that you're talking about.
Yep. I just we wanted to share just some of the different sorts of resources that we've created to help support. Uh, and know that these resources all have stemmed either from questions that have come in or filling a gap that you all shared with us. So please and thank you for always sharing what needs to be fixed, where support is needed, and please keep that coming. We really try to be responsive and really listen and provide support where we know it's necessary. So we have our UPK frequently asked questions page. It's a great place to look. It has all different types of topics. Again, please make an account on California Educators Together and follow the UPKP3 group. There are resources there. There's also links to the California Aspire and different, and also the class assessment tools that you'll find. The website for the Aspire grant has lots of resources around fostering intentional interactions, supporting relationships, high quality environments. There's a statewide system development and regional collaboration and capacity building efforts around that. But we think that website is a great resource. Also, if you go to the next slide, our toolkits have all come out because of a need that we've heard from those that are in programs. So we have a tradition to elementary school toolkit that is intended to support policies and strategies that bridge early learning and care to TK through 12th grade system. So that's really looking at that transition. Developmentally appropriate toileting practices toolkit. If you've been here in this space for a while, you know that was a really hot topic a couple years ago. So we created a toolkit. Family and community partnership toolkit. That one is relatively new. That is to support programs in creating welcoming environments to their schools and programs for families. We have the supporting multilingual learners. That is a guidebook that pulls in all of the resources that have been shared throughout the state previously. And then we have our relatively new inclusion toolkit supporting inclusive preschool practices for all children. This one, there will be a webinar next week showcasing this toolkit and talking a little bit more about what's in that toolkit. We also have our P3 webinar series. We've talked a little bit about 2 upcoming webinars that we have, but we've also had webinars on class to promote effective interactions and build positive relationships, centering and cultivating the Black workforce to strengthen P3 alignment, fostering equity-grounded emotional relationships that reduce the use of exclusionary discipline in P3 settings. So you'll hear a lot of these topics are the items that we've talked about in this presentation. All webinars, if you go onto our California Educators Together, there is a link to all of these webinars. It has a copy of the webinar, it has the slides and any additional resources that we may have created. To hear about our upcoming webinars, and any registration information, you can subscribe to our P3 listserv. We also send out a newsletter bi-monthly. We will share information on how you can sign up for that in the resource document that we share.
We just want to say thank you for coming today and listening. This is our entire early learning community here in Lancaster, and we thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kelly and Shanna, for that. We're going to move to the Q&A portion of our webinar. And so you can type your questions in the chat, or if you would like to come off mute, please use your Zoom feature to raise your hand and we will enable you to come off mute. And then Shanna and Kelly, there are questions in the Q&A and also in the chat as well.
Shanna, could you answer the one around the max class size? Someone's asking, could she have 20 in one class and 28 in the other to have an average of 24?
Yep. I believe we did answer that one in the chat, but yeah, it's an average across all of the classrooms at the site, not a classroom average. So that would work. We also put a link in the chat. If you have any questions around class size, ratios, those sorts of things, you want to reach out to attendance and accounting. You can definitely email us at the UPK inbox, but we will forward them on to attendance and accounting. They do all of the answering on those sorts of questions. So please go ahead and reach out to them.
Trying to
Yep.
find
There
question.
was one in the Q&A about CACFP or self-pre kitchens.
Those are snacks for kids.
Okay, that was in the Q&A. I didn't know if you.
CACFP, your child nutrition. I suppose you could do it yourselves, I suppose, but child nutrition can qualify for that. It's kind of a process, so it's not something you can just say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to sign up for that." And then they can get reimbursement for snacks they give children after school. We use that to vend out our full day snacks. So outside of the meals that full day students eat, also the snacks. I hope that's answering the question.
And then they wanted to know, were your state analysts knowledgeable and helpful with this blend? Or how, I guess maybe the question maybe is like, how did you get started if you were starting from scratch and at the very beginning? What was the most helpful to you? And you mentioned the Amanda Dickey webinar, which I don't even know where to find anymore. But and besides this webinar, which would now be a really good helpful place to get someone started, do you have any other suggestions?
I think for me, I was able that Amanda Dickey webinar for sure was where I got started. And then I was really looking at trying to think about how many 4-year-olds I had because remember, I started doing this when only 2 months of 4-year-olds were going over to TK. So I was able to start a little slowly. And then because my district has a lot of the unduplicated count is pretty high, I was able to sort of think about I would have a percentage of kids at each school site that would qualify. If you're in a district where you don't have such a high duplicated count, but you did have state preschool at this particular neighborhood school, then maybe you start small and do it at that school. So I think it's if you're able to connect with someone at your fiscal office to talk about some of the things that you're going to need to do to put in place for funding of a credentialed teacher, for funding of the second person in the room, or however you want to do it. I would encourage you to reach out to your PQI consultant first because they can help you understand how you're earning your contract. And then second, reach out to fiscal and explain to them, this is how much I can earn if I have this many spots in each of those TK classrooms. You might be in a district where not everyone qualifies for state preschool. So think about how you would then blend the dollars together so that you're sharing a percentage of the material cost for the classroom as well. I think you just have to start small. And of course, I'm a resource if you want to call me.
Uh, Another question in the chat, Kelly, how did you navigate potential union issues with additional requirements for TK teachers? Also, were there issues with TK teacher and a non-credentialed CSPP teacher in the same room? I'm thinking specifically about the pay disparity between the two. If you covered this already, I apologize.
No, okay. So at first, remember I said at the steering committee, on the steering committee, we created a vision and mission. This is what we're going to do. So I called in or I invited anybody who was wanted to teach TK into a space and we talked about this is where our district is our vision and mission of TK. So I talked about the DRDP, I talked about play-based learning. So I invited them to join us in this journey. And if this is not the journey for you, no ego amigo, Peloton, then they opted for a different grade level. So in the very, very beginning, we didn't have requirements on them on DRDP. We just really wanted them to get in the space and play with kids, and really understand what does it mean to be in a child-driven space. And then as the next year came on, then we layered in some of those accountability pieces. So we didn't give it all to them at one time. We started slow for them, and helped build their confidence in being able to do this. The question about the two people in the space, one gets paid high. There's nothing I can do around the pay for people, as you might imagine. And there are two people in the space, and sometimes dealing with adults is way harder than 24 dysregulated children. So we work hard on making sure we pair the right people together. And then obviously they have opportunities to move about the space if that pair isn't working for them. They can move to a different location, but we really work on building that partnership and understanding that there are two experts in the space. One is the teacher of record and expert of all things district, and the other is the teacher of record and expert of all things state preschool. And together they work really hard with the other two people in their classroom to build a team environment where everyone's doing DRDPs, everyone is giving input on children's learning. But it's more successful in a space where they have that conversation around expectations and delegation of work duties, so that they know and they communicate weekly. They meet weekly to have a conversation around how's it going in the classroom. It's not perfect everywhere. I will not misrepresent that. Some places it's really challenging for two adult women to get along with each other, and so they have to navigate around that, so that they're appropriate for children during the day. And then, make decisions for themselves as they move into the next school year. That is probably one of the hardest things, is navigating around the adult upset.
Kelly, one other question that I think you might have some thoughts to share about, and it is, what if your district uses a majority of these funds to fund other things and not the TK classroom? I think districts should be held accountable to spending TK dollars to support TK students.
Yeah, I agree. I think they should be held accountable too. But part of it is understanding how much money they're bringing in. I don't think that it's any one person's misunderstanding. I think there is a lot, like in a district like mine, 90 different resources come in. So one fiscal office doesn't necessarily know what all of those resources are going to, or who is in charge of the budgeting for that resource. So it's important for all the people in the district to connect the dots. Like, I know that this resource is coming in, and I can go to my fiscal person and say, I'm looking for the resource 6547. And she will say, oh, here it is. It came into Fund 1. And then I work with her to align it into the preschool budget. I don't think if you are in early learning and care and you're just thinking that someone's taking that money and using it for other purposes is always the most productive way. I think sometimes you have to bring to them, hey, did you know this money was coming in and it's supposed to be used for this? I know in our own district that UPK implementation grant money was like, where is that money? Who has that money? We had to have a conversation around which resource was it and how do we line it into the right budget. I think doing a through line through your system, but whoever's implementing TK, from the teacher to the curriculum person or whoever the director or early learning person is over TK, needs to be having conversations with ed services, who needs to be having conversations with facilities and fiscal, so that you can make sure that that money is in the right place and used for the right purposes.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. I think we hit every question that was in. Oh, um, how can funding include delivery at non-district, nonprofit, early ed centers so all families have a choice? So in terms of TK is funded through LEA. So TK needs to take place on an LEA campus. I think the ways that we can bring in other programs, and Kelly talked a little bit about her expanded learning programs and how they brought in to create a full day option. We know that there are some, sorry, I'm in a hotel and they're calling. If you hear that, I apologize.
You don't.
Oh, you don't. Okay, good. And I think you can do for your day of learning, we can bring in other programs. But I just wanted to be really clear that in this scenario that we're talking about, we have TK that has been funded by the state. We also have CSPP, but you can bring in other options. You just wouldn't be able to provide TK. But you can provide wraparound services for families to provide that whole we day option. We know of some places that they'll have TK, and then their TK students will go to a private program for to create a fuller day for families because families need longer time. Kelly, you may have some other suggestions and thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, state preschool can be used for before school as well. So
Mhm.
you may not be able to fit in, if especially if you have a half day TK program, you may not be able to fit in a 3 hour chunk for state preschool. So you could offer families an hour before school and 2 hours after and still get your state preschool time. Or you can use the state preschool spot in aftercare, or so in the early ELOP, or if you don't have ELOP at your sites or any opportunity at your site to provide aftercare, you can provide 3 hours of CSPP after school as well, or to create a 9 hour day for kids because you maybe only have 4 hours or 6 hours. So that helps. That helps. But breaking it up is definitely an option. You just have to make sure that you have the right people in the space during the time you're delivering that portion of funding.
So Kelly, I think we've hit upon all of the questions that were put in the Q&A, and I think I got all of the questions in the chat. There was a lot of appreciation for this presentation. There was an appreciation for all of the examples shared.
Well, we appreciate you all for coming and hope that you'll take time to rethink before you lay anyone off or get rid of your state preschool spots. You can use these in lots of different ways to support children around the state. So, and I want to say thank you to Shanna for coming too, because CDE over the period from pre-pandemic to today has been a resource for us in the state like no other, and it wasn't always that way. So I want to say thank you. It was not 5 years ago we would not be doing presentations around the state together. So thank you to you and to whoever lets you come out and do these play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A huge shout out to Stephen Profiter, the director of the Early Education Division. He definitely is a huge advocate. And also, I need to thank Stacy Anagnostopoulos and Nicole Seymour, both who are on the call and both who have been hugely instrumental in meeting with UPK coordinators and answering the email box and doing FAQs and helping with the resources. And then we have Kate Mohialdeen, who does the mixed delivery grant, which is also hugely useful in helping programs think about and counties and first fives and LPCs and R&Rs think about the whole mixed delivery landscape, making sure families know about all of their options. And so, and then Lily Moffett, who has done curriculum work. So our curriculum toolkits, we have to thank her. So it's definitely, and then all of our PQI consultants who support our CSPP programs. So we definitely have many people who are working here at CDE to help support. And so we're really grateful for programs who take the time to share with us all the wonderful things that we're doing so we can partner. And so, we are just really grateful.
And a big shout out to the LEE,
Yes.
Karen and Alyssa and Carla, because I called Karen and said, hey, could you do a presentation for us before March 15th? And she said, sure. And I think it was only 2 weeks ago that she turned this around. So thank you so much, both the Alyssa and Karen, and for Carla, Dr. Carla Bryant for seeing this opportunity through for us. So thank you.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Kelly and Shanna, for presenting on this a very important topic. We know that it is timely and much needed. And I just want to let everyone know we will be sharing a recording of the webinar on the DALI website, and then we will be sharing it via email. And then I wanted to do one last announcement, a shameless plug. DALI will be recruiting for its local education agency fellows cohort for the 2026 through 2028 school year, and that recruitment will begin in the summer of 2026. And so just to give you a little bit of information about the LEA Fellows cohort, is a 2-year cohort designed for the highest position early ed person in a district or a district team with their community-based provider. And they attend these quarterly meetings where they can learn content that will support them to implement an early education mixed delivery strategy. And so we cover things like leadership, governance, budget, assessment, policy, curriculum and instruction, student support, special education, and partnerships with community-based organizations. And so we do bring in guest speakers as well, from the superintendent, from state leaders to community partners, advocates, and policymakers. And so if you like content like this and you want to learn more, please check out our website this summer. Thank you. Take care. Bye, everyone.